What if the world's most celebrated Western weapons, those hailed as unstoppable and technologically supreme, were utterly defeated in a single, harrowing night? On the night of the 16th of October, 2025, the Crimean sky became a global theater for an event that would rattle military doctrines and strategic assumptions from Washington to Beijing. Few could have anticipated what unfolded. Ukraine, backed by months of NATO intelligence and technological support, launched a meticulously orchestrated, multi-pronged missile assault on Russian positions in Crimea. This operation was not just another military strike. It was a grand experiment, a high-stakes gamble to prove that the West's most sophisticated missile technology could break through Russia's formidable, much-ridiculed air defenses. At the heart of this operation were the British Storm Shadow cruise missiles, each one a marvel of modern engineering and the product of years of research, development, and billions of dollars in investment. These missiles, boasting impressive stealth features and pinpoint accuracy, had been lauded in Western capitals as game-changers, having performed well in previous conflicts in the Middle East. Their reputation was such that military planners and defense contractors across the West staked not just battlefield success, but entire procurement philosophies on their perceived invincibility. Yet, as the world soon learned, reputation and reality can diverge in the crucible of war. The Ukrainian strike plan was a masterpiece of deception and coordination. For months leading up to the fateful night, Ukrainian commanders, guided by NATO advisors, rehearsed every possible scenario. They pored over satellite imagery, mapped out the most favorable approach routes, and studied the intricate web of Russian air defense batteries. The operation would take place under the cover of the longest, coldest autumn night, when vigilance was thought to be at its lowest and the element of surprise at its peak, mirroring the surprise attacks that had historically shifted the course of wars, such as the Israeli Air Force's preemptive strike in June 1967 during the Six-Day War, or the German Ardennes offensive in December 1944. But this was more than a simple blitz. The plan involved a complex choreography of manned bombers, unmanned aerial vehicles, decoy balloons, and a relentless barrage of electronic jamming. Ukrainian pilots, flying at treetop level to mask their radar signatures, approached the designated launch points in total radio silence. Swarms of drones, some equipped with cameras, others with radar reflectors or heat flares, moved ahead of the bombers, probing Russian defenses and sowing confusion. Balloons, laced with metallic chaff and thermal decoys, drifted in the wind, designed to trigger Russian radar and anti-aircraft systems. Behind the scenes, teams of NATO electronic warfare specialists and Ukrainian cyber operatives worked feverishly. Their mission was to saturate Russian command posts and radar arrays with false signals, digital noise, and even spoofed targets. The hope was to overwhelm Russian operators, forcing them to waste precious interceptor missiles on phantoms, exhausting their ammunition and opening a window, however narrow, for the real Storm Shadow missiles to slip through. This approach recalled the elaborate deceptions of Operation Bodyguard in World War II, where Allied forces created entire fake armies and radio traffic to mislead German intelligence before D-Day. The stakes could not have been higher. Ukrainian leadership knew that a successful strike would not only damage critical Russian infrastructure, command centers, ammunition depots, airfields, but would also send a thunderous message to the world that Western technology, in Ukrainian hands, could break even the most heavily fortified enemy bastion. For NATO, the operation was a showcase, a live-fire demonstration of the efficacy of its cutting-edge weaponry. A single night's victory could shift the strategic balance in the Black Sea, influence arms sales, and redefine the psychological equilibrium of the region. But the risks were equally immense. Failure would not simply be a matter of lost missiles or wasted effort. It would be a humiliation, a blow to morale, and a challenge to the very idea of Western technological superiority. The reputations of governments, defense contractors, and military planners were all on the line. Just as the French Maginot Line had been bypassed in World War II, exposing the limits of static defense, so too could a failed Ukrainian strike expose the vulnerabilities of the West's most trusted offensive systems. As the moment approached, tension gripped every operations center from Kiev to London. In Kiev, generals and intelligence officers watched their screens, breaths held, as the operation commenced. In London and Washington, encrypted video feeds relayed the unfolding drama, every blip on the radar scrutinized by anxious experts. The attack began in stages. First came the wave of drones and decoys, a veritable cloud of confusion designed to provoke Russian air defenses into action. Electronic warfare units unleashed a torrent of jamming, aiming to scramble communications and blind radar operators. Then, in carefully timed succession, the Storm Shadow missiles were launched from Ukrainian bombers, their routes meticulously plotted to exploit every terrain feature, valleys, riverbeds, and the black waters of the Black Sea itself. The opening minutes were chaos. Russian early warning radars, already on high alert from weeks of escalating tensions, lit up with a flurry of signals. Operators struggled to distinguish real threats from decoys. Across Crimea, the night sky pulsed with the glow of anti-aircraft missile launches. Sirens wailed in Sevastopol and other coastal cities. Residents reported strange, muffled explosions offshore, an eerie echo of the Blitz over London in 1940, when civilians huddled in shelters, uncertain if the next bomb would find its mark. For a brief moment, it seemed the Ukrainian plan was working. Russian defenses were firing at everything: drones, balloons, radar ghosts. But then, just as the first Storm Shadow missiles closed in on their targets, something changed. Russian air defense crews, aided by advanced automation and networked sensors, began to adapt. Algorithms parsed the incoming data at lightning speed, weeding out decoys from genuine threats. S-400 missile batteries, the pride of Russian engineering, reached far out over the horizon, launching interceptors in rapid succession. Buk M3 systems and Pantsir batteries filled the lower airspace, layering the defense in depth. One by one, the Storm Shadow missiles were detected, targeted, and destroyed. The night sky blossomed with explosions, not at Russian bases, but high above the Black Sea, as each missile was intercepted in mid-flight. Not a single one reached its intended mark. By dawn, the assault was over. The much-anticipated demonstration of Western military might had been transformed into a sobering lesson in the realities of modern, multi-domain defense. The immediate consequences were seismic. In Kiev, the mood shifted from anticipation to disbelief. Months of planning, the deployment of Ukraine's rarest and most valuable assets, had yielded nothing but loss. In London and Washington, the reaction was swift and somber. Emergency meetings were convened in the early hours. Military analysts dissected the operation frame by frame, searching for a flaw, an oversight, anything that could explain the catastrophic outcome. The legend of the Storm Shadow, a missile that had once been the pride of Western arsenals, unstoppable in theory and formidable in prior conflicts, was now in question. NATO convened emergency sessions. Defense committees pored over the details. Was this an isolated failure, a product of unique Russian geography and preparation, or had Moscow just exposed fundamental weaknesses in the West's most advanced weapons? Across the world, media coverage was intense. Editorials in major newspapers, from the Times of London to the New York Times and Le Monde, voiced growing doubts about the wisdom of investing billions in weapons that could be defeated so thoroughly. Lawmakers demanded answers, and the debate quickly shifted from Ukrainian resolve to the efficacy and future of Western defense strategy. Would it be wise to continue sending ever more advanced missiles and drones into a conflict where adversaries could so completely neutralize their edge? Historical parallels abounded. Military historians compared the event to the sinking of the HMS Hood in 1941, when Britain's most celebrated battleship was destroyed in minutes, or to the capture of the French fortress of Sedan in World War II, when technological and doctrinal certainties were shattered by rapid adaptation and superior tactics. Within Russia, the mood was triumphant. State media hailed the night as a showcase of Russian ingenuity and perseverance, reminiscent of the defense of Moscow in 1941, or the downing of Gary Power's U-2 spy plane in 1960. Military leaders celebrated, Morale surged, and the public narrative became one of national pride and technical excellence. The message was unambiguous. Russian defenses could stand against any threat the West could muster. For Ukraine, the psychological blow was immense. The failure called into question not only the reliability of Western technology, but also the broader strategy for regaining the initiative in the war. Commanders and pilots, who had spent months preparing for this moment, now faced the daunting prospect of revising their plans while under the shadow of defeat. The political repercussions rippled outward. In Europe, hawks argued for even greater investment in breakthrough technologies, calling for a new generation of weapons that could outpace Russian defenses. Skeptics, meanwhile, urged a fundamental reassessment of strategy, suggesting that the era of high-cost missile campaigns might be over and that new forms of support, or even a negotiated settlement, should be considered. The financial implications were equally profound. Global arms markets reacted with unease. Shares in Western defense contractors dipped as investors questioned whether the next generation of wonder weapons would deliver on their promises. Governments faced pressure to justify the enormous expenditures on systems that, in the eyes of the public, had failed their most crucial test. Most significantly, the myth of technological invincibility had been broken. Military strategists and policymakers were forced to confront a new reality: that layered, adaptive, and networked air defenses, combining radars, interceptors, electronic warfare, and rapid data fusion, could defeat even the most advanced missile threats. The outcome in Crimea echoed lessons from the Yom Kippur War in 1973, when Israel's reliance on air superiority was challenged by unexpected advances in anti-aircraft missile technology. The lessons of that October night are stark and urgent. First, the era of shock and awe, the belief that superior technology alone can guarantee victory, is over. When entire doctrines are built around the presumed invincibility of a single weapon system, a public defeat is not just a technical setback. It is a blow to national pride, credibility, and the logic of deterrence. History is replete with such moments, from the obsolescence of battleships after Pearl Harbor to the collapse of the French Army's static defense in 1940. Second, the future of warfare will be determined by speed, adaptability, and the seamless integration of human and machine intelligence. The Crimean defenders did not rely on any one device or trick. Instead, they fused data from satellites, ground sensors, and airborne platforms, sharing information in real time and coordinating their response across multiple layers of command. In effect, they turned their air defense network into a living organism, capable of learning and adapting faster than its adversary. Third, the arms race is no longer about who can build the biggest missile or the stealthiest drone. It is about who can process information, spot patterns, and adapt to new threats with the greatest speed. Algorithms, automation, and data fusion are now the decisive factors. The side that learns and evolves fastest, not merely the one with the largest arsenal, will hold the upper hand. This shift parallels the information-driven revolutions seen in other domains, from finance to cybersecurity. To ignore these lessons is to court disaster. Military leaders and policymakers who cling to outdated thinking, who trust in yesterday's weapons to solve tomorrow's challenges, risk not only embarrassment, but defeat on a global stage. The 21st century battlefield will reward those who prioritize resilience, coordination, and the rapid sharing of actionable intelligence. Those who persist in the belief that technological edge alone guarantees security will find themselves left behind. Practical steps are already emerging among the world's leading militaries. Training programs now emphasize cross-domain coordination, teaching operators to work seamlessly across air, land, sea, cyber, and space. Investments are shifting from individual weapons platforms to robust sensor networks, artificial intelligence-driven command systems, and electronic warfare capabilities. Drills routinely simulate the loss of key assets, forcing commanders to adapt under pressure and improvise solutions in real time. Nations are also rethinking their procurement strategies. Instead of betting everything on a handful of expensive, high-profile systems, They are diversifying their arsenals, investing in redundancy, and building in the capacity to absorb losses without losing effectiveness. This approach echoes the lessons of the Battle of the Atlantic, where the Allies prevailed not by deploying a single wonder weapon, but by integrating convoys, radar, code-breaking, and escort ships into a resilient system. The psychological dimension cannot be overstated. Morale, both among troops and in the wider society, is shaped not just by victories and defeats, but by confidence in the tools of war. The shock of seeing a celebrated missile system fail can sap the will to fight and erode public support for further investment. Conversely, the ability to absorb setbacks, learn quickly, and adapt confers a powerful advantage, both on the battlefield and at the negotiating table. The world is watching, recalibrating strategies and investments. Every military, from Washington to Beijing, must now decide how to navigate this new era of warfare. The events over Crimea serve as a warning. Even the most advanced missiles can be stopped in their tracks. The decisive factor will no longer be whose technology is newest, but whose organization is most agile and whose thinking is most flexible. What will dictate the course of tomorrow's wars? The answer lies not in a single device or doctrine, but in the relentless pursuit of adaptation. Victory will belong to those who can anticipate, counter, and evolve in the face of ever-changing threats. The era of easy technological advantage is gone. From this moment forward, every nation must reconsider what it means to be secure, and who, at last, truly commands the future. To close, consider this. The night of the 16th of October, 2025, is not merely a date in a military logbook. It is a hinge in history. The events over Crimea signal a turning point that will shape doctrine, policy, and strategy for decades to come. As in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, the fall of the Berlin Wall, or the dawn of the digital age, the world must now adapt, or risk being left behind. Will nations rise to the challenge, embracing new ways of thinking and organizing for security? Or will they cling to the comforting myths of technological superiority, only to be surprised again on another dark, silent night? The answer, as ever, will be written not in the boasts of politicians or the glossy brochures of arms manufacturers, but in the unyielding test of reality. The future belongs to those who learn fastest, adapt best, and never stop questioning the limits of the possible. And as the world reckons with the lessons of that fateful night, one truth stands clear. The real weapon, the one that will decide the fate of nations, is the mind that never stops learning.